Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I thought I'd have a quick look at the 4 Miltoniopsis and a chat about them as they're out while I'm watering. These don't come out very often apart from to be watered. None are in bloom at the moment, but 3 of them have been recently. This one was sent to me as a gift because I kept singing the praises of yellow Miltoniopsis that are almost impossible to get hold of in the EU. Plenty of people own them and bloom them in the States, but I was talking to Sarah of Burnham Nurseries, querying why we don't get the yellow ones, and she said that the mass producers in the EU have decided, rightly or wrongly, that the yellow ones are not as strong and not as easy to grow and bloom. I'd debate that. I can't see that just because it's yellow it's any different. Plants are the same. Anyway, this one was a gift. It was repotted when I got it. It's producing some good roots against this good new growth. This growth will bloom, I'm sure. That's not a bad plant at all. Looking forward to that one. What else have we got here? So this one first. Yeah, this is Junette. This hasn't long gone out of bloom, and this one is a pale yellow, and was got in the EU. This has been repotted recently. This has got quite a good root system and is producing a new growth. I think it's just the one at the moment. Yeah, the previous new growth bloomed. So yeah, so this one's coming on, and there is some new root growth starting at the base here where the new growth is. That one hasn't got a bad root system, so I'm happy that that one won't you know, suffer from being repotted like they do sometimes. Now these last two have both recently been hacked. Reason being, they were producing new growths high up on the plant, way away from the media, which meant the roots were drying back before they could get into the media, which is no good. You can't lose roots on these, they're precious. And they are easy to lose. So basically I took the plants apart and took the pieces of the plants with the new growths down at the level of the media, and you can see the response straight away. Yeah, as soon as the capability of getting into some moist media is there, they will take advantage of it. Yeah, so I've got a new growth coming out here. This one's endearingly known as Donald because of the patterning on the blooms, but this has got quite a few new growths, all of which now are in contact with the media, so this one should pick up quite quickly. There's actually 2 pieces there. The plant ended up, to get me to enable me to actually get the base of the plants down on top of the media, some of the older bulbs had to go, and in doing so it ended up in 2 parts. So that's what I've got here. There's actually 2 separate plants, but seems to be picking up again and hasn't suffered too bad from its repot. That's that one, and this is the one that's recently had exactly the same thing done to it. So this is the most recent repot. It hasn't started to pick up yet, as far as I can see, but it has got new growths, and typical of Miltoniopsis, the new growth comes out above the base of the plant, which is a flipping nuisance. So as soon as that new growth's strong enough, this leaf will come off, so that the base of that little new growth is exposed, which means when the roots come out, they'll go straight downwards into the media. If I leave that leaf on, at least some of the roots will go up the leaf on the inside there, and they won't get to the media, so there'll be aerial roots, and aerial roots on these are not ideal. They need to get into the media, so that's the plan for that one. As far as Miltoniopsis are concerned, they are what I call a fragile orchid. They're not as easy as some of the other orchids, but again, it's down to giving them the right conditions. They shouldn't dry out, number one. The roots will go over quite easily if they keep getting dry. They'll lose their growing tips. Yeah, and roots on these are precious. You know, they need to be looked after. And the other thing that will take the roots down is if the media starts to break down. So personally, I think these ought to be repotted quite frequently. Best time obviously is when there's new roots pushing, you know, into the top of the media, but they are quite fragile, so repotting has to be done carefully. The roots are precious. You know, you've got to really be careful not to break any. So that's what goes on in the pot. A media that retains moisture, pretty good. Large chunky bark probably isn't going to work for them because they will get dry. Yeah. So I mean, I tend to use the small bark with sphagnum moss mixed in, and they actually stay moist for some time then. But because of that, the media breaks down faster. So I've got to keep my eye on repotting dates, not let that media start to go. Once you lose the root systems on these, they're not the easiest of orchids to recover. They're really not. Next thing is when you get to the plant. These are not high light plants. They don't need high light. So less than normal Oncidium types, more than Phalaenopsis, somewhere sort of in between. They don't need high light. Some of them are capable of taking quite bright light, but it could be putting them under stress and you don't know. Because obviously the higher light involves the mechanisms inside the plant working faster. You know, it speeds up the transpiration rate, speeds up photosynthesis. The whole inside of the plant's working faster. Well, if the root base can't support that, it's under stress. These do not like getting stressed. So not too much light. Good light, I would say, but not bright light, just underneath that level. They need moist air. They don't like dry air, so good humidity. And these are the types that are not that tolerant of dry air. You know, you will start getting leaf dieback and things. They don't like it. So, you know, reasonable amount of humidity for them. And they love air movement. They don't like a force 8 gale, but they like good air movement. And they like to stay cool. And that goes in with the air movement, because if you've got good air movement, you're automatically keeping them a bit cooler. You know, air movement has a cooling effect. It stops the heat staying on the leaves, moves the air around. So, yeah, not the easiest of orchids, I would say. But again, it's the conditions, not the plant itself. So, so that's a quick chat about my Miltoniopsis. I've only got 4. I don't plan on getting any more, but if I see one that catches my eye that looks like a good plant and does have roots, I would get it. You know, I've got room for them. You know, the area where they live has space, so I could get another one. But it is a matter of, I've lost quite a lot of these in the past. So for me, they're not the easiest to grow. And the thing that stops these doing so well is my summer. You know, when it is really warm in here. I do my best with the humidity, but they don't like that heat. You know, it just slows them down, which is another form of stress. These plants can take one form of stress at a time reasonably well, but give them more than one at a time and they don't like it. So I wouldn't call them easy, but it's the conditions. Keep them cool, keep the air moving, keep that air moist, look after your roots. Don't let your roots suffer. So don't let that media start going off, and don't let them get dry. They also don't like to be soggy. You know, there is a difference between constantly moist and soggy. So they're not the sort of things that, you know, you watered it yesterday, you look at it today, it's still soaking wet, and you water it again? That's not a good idea. The media does need to start to dry a bit in between, but not get totally dry. It will take your roots down. So let them err on the drier side, but then give them a good water again. And don't let that media break down. That's the thing that will take the roots down quicker than anything. And that's often the case, unfortunately, when you buy them. The media is already breaking down. You're already losing the roots, and you haven't even got the flipping thing home yet. Yeah. So buying a good plant with a good root system, you know, that doesn't look like it's been sat in that pot for 2 years, you'd probably be more successful. And starting with a good one, you're more likely to be successful than starting with a plant that's immediately in a form of a rescue plant, because you get it home, you go to repot it, and there's no roots. It's immediately a rescue plant. And these don't like any form of stress. So, you know, that's the time you may well be onto a loser when that happens. But they are worth a go. The blooms are gorgeous. So, and virtually all of them are fragrant, you know, and it's a nice fragrance too. It's a sweet... I always think of the fragrance on these as roses with a hint of soap. I'm not very good at describing fragrances, but that's the best expression I've come up with. And it's pleasant, it's nice. And all sorts of colours again, from whites, you know, through all the pinks, into the purples, through the reds, with lovely patterning on some of them as well, the waterfall pattern or the splash pattern, whatever you want to call it. They are worthwhile if you've got suitable conditions. But if you don't think you've got suitable conditions, you may well struggle with them, and then they can be disappointing. So you have to sort of weigh things up. But a lot of these get bought in supermarkets and garden centres and things, and the plants are already dying, but they're in bloom. So a lot of the time people are taking them home to die, and that's not good. You know, it can put you off. So just be aware that they're not the easiest of orchids, but with the right conditions they will grow well and they will bloom. If you've got a reasonably mature plant and a new growth matures, you're probably going to get one and often two spikes. So, you know, they can be quite floriferous. That's a big word on two coffees. Okay, see you next time. Bye for now.